Little Blue, as everyone called him, knew there was a lot going on under the trees as it was above on the treetops where he lived. His brothers and sisters made fun of him because he wasn't the biggest flyer. Little did they know that he had discovered a beautiful world in the undergrowth of the little Greenwood. It first started when he heard a beautiful sound and he had described to his family. They had said, "That was probably the new bird that had come to their forest. Noisy fellow who thought his call was beautiful, but it wasn't." Blue knew then that it wasn't a bird singing, rather a very strange, sweet sound that he needed to find out about. So he hopped lower and lower on the branches of the gum tree, and as he went down, the air became perfumed with a smell that later on, he was told, was eucalyptus and the smell of Australia, the place they lived in. As he went down, the sweet sound got louder and louder, and near the bottom of the lovely old tree sat the strangest creature he had ever seen. It was a little old man with a very kind face, a very big nose and pointy shoes. Now, this person wasn't like the people he had seen before who lived in the city. He had seen them when he had flown over a garden where the kind old lady put seeds for them to eat. This little strange person was very small, and when Blue spoke, which the humans called chirping, they did not understand him. However, when Blue chirped, the old man looked at him and smiled. He told Blue that the strange thing he was playing was a gnome flute, and that he was a gnome. He said that there was a big enchanted world out there that only very special creatures could see. He wasn't surprised that Blue's brothers and sisters hadn't heard his flute. He told Blue that he was honoured to meet someone who could see them. The creatures of Greenwood. It hadn't happened in many years, and that there was a story that this only happened when there was a supermoon in the sky. As Blue was talking to the sweet old Mr. Gnome, there was a piercing sound, a shriek of a lady voice saying, "Stop the chatter, you old man hatter, and stop the crazy music! I can't sleep!" Gnome laughed out loud. It seemed he was very wise and did not get upset as easily as Blue did when his family shouted at him, those times when he was trying to take out different sounds by knocking his beak on the trees and his family chirped at him. Gnome said, "It's Lady's elf own problem. She had such a bad temper, though she has a very good heart." Gnome shouted back, "A little Blue has come back from the heavens." That seemed to make the old lady elf happier. She said, "Oh, that is such an honour to have someone come down from the heavens, and she needed to see him right away." Grandma Elf, as everyone called her, was someone who loved nature and went about digging the earth so trees could grow better. She said, "Trees need light and water." She dug near the trees so that water could seep into the earth and the trees could drink it. She said, "It got really bad in the bushfire season." They were lucky here in their little fairy village because it was green and near a lake. But they had heard stories about how in this land animals had to run big distances to avoid the fires. Blue did remember one such fire when he was a little baby. His mother had shown it to him from afar. Blue told Grandma Elf, "It is an honour to meet such a grand lady." And this made her really giggle very loud. Gnome said, "It must be that naughty little winemaker elf that had probably made a strong brew of eucalyptus for Grandma to drink." And sure enough, right in the middle of a sentence, Lady Elf started snoring. Gnome smiled wisely and pointed to Grandma and said, "It's difficult for her to sleep anyway." Blue laughed like he hadn't done before in his little life, as Grandma's snores grew louder and louder. Normally, a brewer of potions would be a druid. However, in the little Greenwood village, they had Jake, the little red-cheek elf who did this job. He had been making magic potions for a long time, and the village laughed at his naughtiness. He was a strange case. He was adopted by the druid. The druid then made Jake his successor because the druid was getting old and tired. Even then, the druid was very sharp. He didn't miss much of Jake's naughtiness. So, at times, such as these, the village folk would hear Jake getting spanks from the druid and giving Grandma Elf too strong a potion. Jake did this because he liked Gnome's music, especially when he was busy at work making potions, and because Grandma Elf complained too much about the flute music. He gave her strong potions to make her sleep. He did not realize, though, how important her digging job was to keep Greenwood green. Blue loved Jake immediately and thought they would be best friends. He found Jake very funny, even in the way he said how honored he was to meet Blue, because he had come down from the heavens. He told Blue that it was true that this only happened at the time of the super-duper moon, and then did a little dance for Blue. Druid looked at Blue very seriously and said, "It is an honor to meet you, Blue. However, Blue lacked the strength he needed to do big things in their charmed village. He asked Jake to make Blue a special strength potion. He told them strictly not to make the kind Jake made for Grandma Elf." At that, Jake hooted and rolled with laughter, and for Blue it was such a surprise that Jake had such a big voice. Jake winked at him and said, "It took an extra strong potion to make his voice big when the druid wasn't looking." Gnome had heard the whole conversations and said, "At times, he wondered why the druid hadn't found another young druid to be his apprentice." He chuckled under his breath and said, "Druid was having too much of his own potions." At that, Jake started stirring and mixing the potion in a cauldron, urging Gnome to play the flute louder, saying, "It wasn't louder than Lady Elf snores." At which Lady Elf opened one eye and shook her pickaxe at him and promptly started snoring again. The smoke from the fire made the most amazing creature come down from the trees, who came down sneezing and coughing, complaining to Jake about
the strong brew he was mixing.
Jake introduced her as the fairy, with a charming curtsy to Blue. Blue thought he had never seen something so beautiful, that had wings like him, but a body of a little human. Rather, no human was so beautiful, and he wondered why he hadn't seen her up in the trees when he lived there before coming down to Greenwood. It was like Fairy could read his thoughts, and she said to Blue,
she had seen him up in the trees, though at that time Blue did not have the gifts he had now.
She said,
"It was the supermoon that chose someone to shower this gift of magical powers upon every once in a blue moon."
She asked Blue
if he was aware about how important this job is.
The question made Blue very confused, so she asked him
whether he knew that the druid was getting this special potion done for him so that his powers could increase further. This would help Blue see the future even better than Druid.
Because she said,
Druid only made wild guesses. With the help of the potion, Blue would be able to see trouble coming, or even be able to rejoice at future celebrations.
Blue felt it was such a big and heavy responsibility. Jake handed Blue the potion, and Blue could see thunderclouds appearing in the liquid and hear hissing. So he requested the gnome take it away, as he was too scared to take on the job of the seer. All the creatures of Greenwood shook their heads sadly and said, "We are doomed, doomed." Blue had never met such amazing little people before, and had never gained such trust and respect in an instant. He thought his other option was to go up into the trees to a life he hated. So he drank before he could doubt more, and suddenly there was a whistling sound in his ears, and the world went black. Blue felt he was here. Then he felt he was there. Then he was above the treetops and even higher in the sky. Then he was suddenly on the rich earth of the Greenwood, right next to the cauldron. Then he would be sitting on a leaf with the dewdrops like diamonds. And then he was so small that the dewdrop rolled over him like a massive glass bubble. Inside this dewdrop, he wished his glass bubble was his home and palace. He looked at the fairy, and the fairy's beautiful face was stretched long, and naughty Jake was looking like the druid, and the druid like Jake. In this state, Blue thought, after all, they were father and son, and no one knew about it, and laughed loudly, but no one seemed to hear. He wanted to ask the gnome why they were all looking at him in such a strange way. But now Gnome's face was on Lady Elf's body, and Lady Elf's face was on Gnome's body. The tiny ants and earthworms that Lady Elf dug up were now huge monsters towering over everyone. Jake's booming laughter was booming even more, and the trees were shaking with it. Blue realized it was laughter because Jake cried in the same way too. And it seemed the druid was spanking Jake with a big wooden spoon. And the last thing Blue heard was, "Jake, what potion did you give Blue? Hope it wasn't the one meant for the wizard. Help keep his powers under control." Then all went silent.